What if I told you there is one health number that can quietly expose how fast you are aging, how much physical reserve you still have left, and how likely you are to stay independent as you get older? Not your weight, though. Not your cholesterol exactly. Not even your blood pressure by itself. I mean the number that tells us what your body can actually do. Under stress. In real life. When it has to climb, carry, recover, circulate, breathe, and keep you going. Because a lot of people have normal lab work on paper and still feel old in their body. They get out of breath on stairs. They need a break after carrying groceries. They avoid hills. They recover slowly. They sleep poorly. And they think that is just age. But sometimes that is not age. Sometimes that is low cardiorespiratory fitness. And that one issue can tell you a lot more about your lifespan than most people realize. Why this number matters so much. When people think about longevity, they usually think about cholesterol first. Maybe blood sugar. Maybe blood pressure if they have had a scare. And yes, all of those matter. I do not want you to hear this video and think, oh good, I can ignore my cholesterol now, or I can stop caring about blood pressure. Absolutely not. Those numbers matter because they help us estimate risk. But VO2 max is different. VO2 max does not just estimate what might happen to you someday. It shows, right now, how much capacity your body has. It reflects how well your lungs bring oxygen in, how well your heart pumps it out, how well your blood carries it, how well your blood vessels deliver it, and how well your muscles actually use it. So, instead of looking at one tiny corner of the picture, VO2 max is looking at the whole machinery. And the reason that matters is simple. When your body loses capacity, life gets smaller. You stop moving as much, your blood pressure usually gets harder to control, your stamina drops, your recovery worsens, your independence starts slipping, and then all of a sudden people say, I just got old. But very often, they did not just get old, they got deconditioned. What VO2 max actually is. So let us simplify the scary term. VO2 max means the maximum amount of oxygen your body can take in and use during hard exercise. That is it. If you want the technical version, it is measured in milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. But honestly, you do not need to memorize that unless you enjoy sounding fancy at dinner parties. And I do not think most people do. What you do need to understand is that oxygen is your body's fuel partner. You breathe oxygen in, your lungs move it into your blood. Your heart pumps that oxygen-rich blood to your muscles. Your muscles use that oxygen to make energy. And VO2 max is basically asking, when the demand gets high, how much can your system deliver? Because when your body needs more from you, like walking uphill, catching a flight, getting sick, recovering from surgery, playing with your grandkids, dealing with stress, or just aging, the question is not whether you can survive resting on a couch. The question is how much reserve you have when life asks for more. The reserve. Most people never think about that word. Reserve is everything. Most people do not think in terms of reserve until they lose it. They do not notice it when they are 35 and skipping workouts. They do not notice it when they are 42 and sitting more. They do not notice it when they are 51 and gaining 15 pounds slowly. They notice it when simple things feel harder, when they are breathing heavier, tying their shoes, when stairs become a negotiation instead of something they just do, when one bad night of sleep wrecks the next day, when a mild illness feels like a major event. And that is because reserve is what protects you from becoming fragile. You can think of VO2 max like your physiological savings account. If you have a big reserve, you can handle more. If you have a small reserve, everything costs you more. A short walk costs more, stress costs more, heat costs more, poor sleep costs more, aging costs more. And that is why this number matters. It tells you how expensive life has become for your body. Why VO2 max can matter more than cholesterol. Now, I know that title is provocative, so let me explain it carefully. Cholesterol matters, blood pressure matters, but those are risk markers. VO2 max is both a risk marker and a performance marker. It tells us how your body is functioning across multiple systems at once. You can have someone with mildly elevated cholesterol who is metabolically active, strong, walks every day, recovers well, and has great fitness. And you can also have someone with a decent cholesterol panel who gets winded walking up one flight of stairs, has no endurance, poor recovery, rising blood pressure, and almost no physical reserve. Which person would I worry about more long term? Honestly, the second one. Because poor fitness is not just about being bad at exercise. Poor fitness is often the visible tip of a deeper problem. Reduced circulation, reduced metabolic flexibility, reduced muscle function, lower mitochondrial health, lower resilience, and usually a lifestyle pattern that silently drives future disease. That is why low cardiorespiratory fitness keeps showing up in research as one of the strongest predictors of early death. Why blood pressure is still in this conversation, and this is where the second part of the title comes in. VO2 max versus blood pressure. People love to make health look like a cage match. Which is more important, this or that? But the truth is, these numbers are connected, very connected. If your VO2 max is low, there is a good chance your blood vessels are less adaptable, your resting heart rate may be higher, your body may not tolerate stress as well, and your blood pressure may become harder to manage over time. And if your blood pressure is chronically high, that extra pressure can damage your blood vessels, strain your heart, stiffen your system, and make it harder for your body to perform well when demand rises. So no, they are not enemies. They are dance partners. But if you force me to choose the number that tells me more about how much life your body can do, I want to know your VO2 max, because blood pressure tells me how much pressure is in the pipes. VO2 max tells me how well the whole house works. The scary part about looking fine here is where people get fooled. Many people with poor fitness do not look sick. They go to work, they drive, they do errands, they function. Their labs may not look dramatic. Their doctor may not say much. Their family may say, "You are fine." But then you watch what happens when the body is challenged. They avoid stairs. They hate parking far away. They need to sit down after carrying luggage. They breathe hard walking uphill. They take forever to recover after a workout. If they work out at all. And they think, well, I guess this is normal now. It is not normal. It may be common, but common is not the same as healthy. And this is exactly why VO2 max is such a revealing number. It exposes what your body can really do when it is asked to produce energy, circulate blood, move oxygen, and tolerate effort. Not when it is sitting in a chair, when it is living. How low fitness affects the rest of your body. Low fitness is not just an exercise issue. It touches almost everything. Your heart has to work harder for less output. Your muscles become less efficient at using oxygen. Your body becomes less forgiving of weight gain. Blood sugar control usually gets worse. Your sleep tends to get worse. Your stress tolerance drops. And because you move less, you start losing even more fitness. It becomes a trap. And it is a trap many people do not notice until it is deep. The body is incredibly adaptive. It will adapt downward if you ask it to. If you stop demanding much from it, it will stop giving much back. That is not punishment, that is biology. Your body is always asking one question: what kind of life does this person need me to be prepared for? If the answer is sitting, scrolling, driving, snacking, and sleeping badly, your body will adapt to that life. Not the life you say you want, the life you actually practice. The age problem nobody talks about honestly. VO2 max naturally declines with age, That part is true. But people use that truth in a very lazy way. They hear that fitness drops with age, and then they stop fighting for it. That would be like hearing that muscle declines with age and deciding never to pick up anything heavy again. Yes, VO2 max tends to peak earlier in adulthood and then it gradually drops. But how fast it drops and how low it goes depends a lot on what you do. And that is the hopeful part. Because a large part of what people think is aging is actually inactivity layered on top of aging. Those are not the same thing. One is inevitable, the other is modifiable. So if you are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and you are thinking, well, I guess I missed my chance. No, you did not. You may not get the VO2 max of an Olympic cyclist, but you can absolutely build more reserve than you have right now. And for longevity, that matters tremendously. The simplest way to picture VO2 max, I want you to imagine two people the same age, same cholesterol, same blood pressure today, same body size roughly. Person 1 walks every day, can climb stairs without stopping, exercises a few times a week, recovers well, and stays active. Person 2 gets breathless easily, sits most of the day, avoids exertion, sleeps poorly, and has not challenged their cardiovascular system in years. On paper, they may look similar for a while, but under the hood, they are not the same. One body has reserve. The other body is running close to its limit doing ordinary life, and that is the key difference. If ordinary life already feels like hard mode, what happens when something real shows up? What happens with illness? What happens with surgery? What happens with grief, poor sleep, injury, travel, heat, infection, or age? The person with more reserve usually has more room. The person with less reserve gets exposed quickly. How do you know if your VO2 max might be low? Now, ideally you measure it, but before we even talk about tests, your daily life may already be dropping hints. Do you get unusually winded walking upstairs? Do you avoid hills because you know how you will feel? Do you need long recovery after modest activity? Is brisk walking enough to make conversation difficult? Do you find yourself choosing convenience not because you are busy, but because effort feels expensive? That matters. Another clue is your recovery. How fast does your breathing settle after exertion? How quickly does your heart rate come down? How comfortable are you moving through daily tasks? Can you walk for 30 to 45 minutes at a solid pace and still feel functional afterward? Not destroyed? Those things are not perfect VO2 max measurements, but they are meaningful. Your body is constantly reporting on itself. Most people just do not listen until the message gets loud. How this is actually measured. The gold standard is a formal exercise test. Usually you wear a mask and you walk, run, or cycle while the effort gradually increases. The equipment measures how much oxygen you take in and how much carbon dioxide you breathe out. That gives a direct estimate of your true VO2 max. But not everybody needs that. Many smartwatches and fitness trackers now estimate VO2 max. Are they perfect? No, but they can still be useful directionally. And that is important, because sometimes people obsess over perfect measurement and use that as an excuse to do nothing. You do not need perfection to begin. You need honest feedback. If your wearable shows a low fitness level, or your exercise tolerance is poor, or walking briskly feels harder than it should, you already have enough information to care. You may not have the perfect number, but you probably have the message. The mistake people make with one number now, I want to be fair, VO2 max is important. It is not magic. It is not the only number that matters. And I do not want you becoming the person who ignores sleep, nutrition, blood pressure, alcohol, strength, muscle mass, stress, and relationships because your smartwatch gave you a shiny score. That would be ridiculous. Your health is bigger than one metric. But this number matters because it bundles so many systems together. It is like a stress test for your life capacity. And unlike some numbers that can look okay while disease is still brewing, VO2 max often reflects what your body is actually capable of doing. That is why it gets so much respect, because it is hard to fake fitness. You can fake looking okay. You can fake feeling okay for a while. You cannot fake reserve, when life asks for output. Why low fitness and high blood pressure often travel together. Let us connect this back to blood pressure, because I do not want you thinking these are separate universes. When you train your cardiovascular system, several helpful things tend to happen. Your heart becomes more efficient. Your blood vessels become more responsive. Your body gets better at dilating vessels when needed. Your resting heart rate often comes down. Your stress response can improve. Your insulin sensitivity often improves. Your sleep may improve. Your weight may improve. And all of those changes can support healthier blood pressure. That does not mean exercise alone fixes every case of hypertension. It does not. Some people absolutely need medication, and there should be no shame in that. But poor fitness and uncontrolled blood pressure often feed each other. The less fit you are, the more everyday effort spikes strain. The higher the strain, the less you feel like moving, and the cycle keeps going. So improving VO2 max is not just about lifespan in theory. It can change how hard your circulatory system has to work every day. What makes VO2 max go down? This part is important because people assume low fitness comes only from not exercising enough. It is usually more layered than that. Yes, inactivity is a major reason, but so is extra body fat, because VO2 max is measured relative to body weight. So if the denominator goes up and your oxygen-using capacity does not, the score can look worse. Low muscle mass matters too. Poor sleep matters. Chronic stress matters. Some medications can affect exercise capacity. Heart and lung conditions matter. Anemia can matter. Repeated detraining matters. And then there is the most common issue of all. People stop doing intense enough work to challenge adaptation. They stay in the comfort zone. They move, maybe, but they do not train. And your body, especially your cardiovascular system, needs enough stimulus to upgrade. Walking is wonderful, but at some point, if you want a better VO2 max, your body usually needs a stronger reason to change. How to start improving it without making yourself miserable. This is where people go wrong. They hear that VO2 max matters, and then they think they need to become a triathlete by Monday. No, that is not the lesson. The lesson is to become more aerobically capable than you are right now. Start with consistency. If you are doing nothing, then regular walking is powerful. Brisk walking, not wandering through a parking lot holding a coffee. Walking with intention. Walking at a pace where you can still talk, but you know you are working. That matters. Then, once your body is tolerating that, you start adding challenge. A hill, a faster pace, a longer duration, a few controlled bursts, some cycling, some swimming, some rower work. Whatever your joints and schedule can tolerate, and whatever you can repeat. Because fitness does not come from occasional heroics. It comes from repeated signals. The role of intervals. If you really want to move VO2 max, intervals can help a lot. And when I say intervals, I do not mean punishing yourself until you hate exercise forever. I mean short periods where you work harder than your usual pace, followed by recovery. For example, maybe you walk briskly for a few minutes, then push the pace for 30 seconds to 1 minute, then recover, then repeat. As you get fitter, those intervals can get more structured, but even simple versions matter. Why? Because your body adapts when demand rises. If you never ask your heart, lungs, blood vessels, and muscles to operate at a higher output, they have very little reason to improve. That does not mean every workout should be hard. Absolutely not. But it does mean some training should challenge you. Enough to create change. Comfort maintains. Challenge transforms. Do not ignore strength in this conversation. This is another place where people get confused. VO2 max is about oxygen use, yes, but muscle still matters. Muscle is part of the engine using that oxygen. If you lose muscle as you age, you reduce the tissue that helps you do work. You become less capable, less stable, less resilient. And then your cardiovascular tasks feel harder because the muscular system supporting them is weaker. So if you want to protect longevity, you do not just do cardio, you keep muscle. You build muscle when appropriate. You stay strong enough to move your body efficiently. Because sometimes what looks like bad cardio is partially bad muscle. A person feels exhausted walking upstairs, but the legs are weak, the core is weak, the posture is poor, and now every step costs more. That is not just lungs, that is the whole system underperforming. The weight issue. People do not like hearing this next part is sensitive, but we need to be honest. If someone is carrying a lot of extra body fat, their VO2 max often suffers, partly because the body has to move more mass, partly because metabolic health is often worse, partly because activity becomes harder, so people do less of it, and partly because the score is relative to body weight. That does not mean thin automatically equals fit. Not at all. There are plenty of thinner people with terrible fitness. But if you improve body composition thoughtfully, especially by losing excess fat while preserving or building muscle, you often improve exercise capacity and cardiovascular strain at the same time. Again, this is not about appearance. This is about work output. How much effort does it cost your body to move through life? If the cost is too high, lifespan and health span usually both suffer. What blood pressure can teach you during this process? I actually want you to use blood pressure as feedback while you work on fitness. Because if you are increasing activity, improving sleep, reducing alcohol, eating better, lowering stress, and becoming more conditioned, your blood pressure often tells that story before your mirror does. Check it at home. Learn your patterns. See what happens after a week of consistent walking. See what happens when you sleep better. See what happens when you cut back on restaurant food. See what happens when you stop being sedentary for 12 hours a day. That data matters. Because sometimes the body rewards good behavior quickly, and that is motivating. But remember this too. Do not wait until your blood pressure becomes severe before you respect fitness. That is like waiting for your house to catch fire before deciding smoke matters. Fitness is prevention. It is reserve building. It is silent protection. And that protection compounds. One of the biggest lies in modern health, one of the biggest lies people tell themselves is this: I do not need to be fit. I just need to not be sick. Those are not the same thing. Not being sick is a very low bar. Being fit means your body can perform, recover, tolerate stress, stay independent, and meet the demands of life. That is a much higher bar. And that higher bar is what protects your dignity later. Because longevity is not just about keeping your heart beating longer. It is about being able to live inside your body well, to travel, to think, to climb stairs, to get off the floor, to keep up with your own life, to not become trapped by your limitations. And when you think of it that way, VO2 max stops sounding like a niche athlete term, and starts sounding like what it really is, a marker of how much living your body is still prepared to do. If you are over 40, this matters even more now. If you are younger, build this early. If you are older, protect it aggressively. Because after 40, 50, 60, things compound faster. Muscle loss compounds. Sedentary habits compound. Stiffness compounds. Weight gain compounds. Blood pressure issues compound. Recovery changes. Sleep changes. And if your fitness drops on top of all that, life narrows quickly. This is why the people who stay active as they age often look dramatically different from their peers. Not because they won the genetic lottery every time. Sometimes they did not. Sometimes they just refused to let their reserve disappear. They kept training the system. They kept moving. They kept building capacity, even in small doses, even imperfectly, even when life was busy. And those decisions, repeated for years, create a very different old age. What if your VO2 max is low right now? Then good. Now you know. I do not mean good as in ideal. I mean good as in useful. Because a low number is not an identity. It is information. It is a clue. It is your body saying, here is where we are. And once you know where you are, you can improve it. People get so emotional about numbers. They see low fitness and they hear failure. I do not. I hear opportunity. I hear modifiable risk. I hear a place where lifestyle can still make a major difference. That is very hopeful. If your number is low, you do not need shame. You need a plan. You need walking. You need progression. You need better sleep, better food, less alcohol, more muscle, more consistency, more respect for your cardiovascular system. And over time, you build a different body. What if your blood pressure is normal but your fitness is poor? Do not get complacent. Normal blood pressure today is good. Keep it. Protect it. But if your fitness is poor, that still matters. Because low fitness predicts trouble long before some people develop obvious disease. It is a warning shot. Not an emergency, maybe, but a warning. It is telling you your margin is shrinking. And I really want people to understand that health is not just about avoiding bad numbers. It is about building good capacity. There is a huge difference between nothing is obviously wrong yet and my body is robust. Those are not the same state. If your body is fragile under effort, even if your labs look okay today, you should pay attention. That is not fear, that is wisdom, before the consequences get louder. What if your VO2 max is decent, but your blood pressure is high? Then you still need to address the blood pressure. Please do not weaponize this video against good medical care. I have seen people do that. They find one exciting concept and use it to ignore the rest. No, if your blood pressure is high, take that seriously. Fitness helps, nutrition helps, weight management helps, sleep helps, stress reduction helps, limiting alcohol helps, and medication may help or be necessary too. Sometimes both things are true. You can be reasonable fit and still have hypertension that needs treatment. So the message is not that VO2 max replaces blood pressure. The message is that VO2 max may tell you something broader about your future functional reserve, while blood pressure tells you about strain that still absolutely deserves respect. Both matter. But too many people watch blood pressure and ignore fitness, and that is a major mistake. The practical goal most people should have: most people do not need an elite score. You do not need to become obsessed. You do not need to compare yourself to younger athletes online. What you want is to move out of low. That is the first mission. Get out of the bottom zone. Get out of the place where stairs feel threatening, recovery is poor, and daily life feels costly. Then aim for solid, then better. Because the biggest gains in health often happen when people move from very poor fitness to moderate fitness. That is encouraging. You do not need perfection for benefit. You need progress. That means if you are sedentary today, a consistent 3 months can matter. If you are somewhat active today, a little structure can matter. If you are already training, sharper programming can matter. Every level has a next level, and the body responds when you give it a reason. What your morning routine might be saying about your fitness. I want to give you another angle. How do you feel in the morning? Do you wake up tired, stiff, not refreshed, already behind, Already stressed? Do you wake up and your first move is caffeine because your system feels flat? Do you feel like your body needs hours before it feels ready? Sometimes that is sleep. Sometimes it is stress. Sometimes it is blood pressure. But sometimes it is also poor conditioning. Because a well-conditioned body often handles the transitions of life better. It clears exertion better. It regulates better. It recovers better. It tolerates physical demand better. Again, not always. Medicine is personal. But if you feel fragile, slow to recover, easily overwhelmed physically, your fitness may be part of that story in a bigger way than you realize. The mentality shift that changes everything. Stop thinking of exercise as calorie burning. That mindset is too small. Think of it as reserve building. Every walk is reserve building. Every hill is reserve building. Every interval is reserve building. Every strength session is reserve building. Every good night of sleep that supports recovery is reserve building. You are not just trying to look better in clothes. You are teaching your heart to pump better, your vessels to respond better, your muscles to use oxygen better, your brain to tolerate effort better, your body to stay more capable later. That is a much deeper reason to move. And when the motivation becomes deeper, consistency gets easier. Because now the goal is not punishment. The goal is preserving your future self. And that is a very loving thing to do. So what should you actually do this week? Let me make this very practical. Number 1, if you have a wearable that gives a VO2 max estimate, look at it. Not with judgment, just with curiosity. Number 2, if you do not have that, pay attention to how you handle stairs, brisk walking, and recovery. Number 3, start walking intentionally at least most days of the week. Number 4, add 1 or 2 short, harder efforts into a walk if it is safe for you. Number 5, start strength training if you are not already. Number 6, check your blood pressure at home and observe what changes as your fitness improves. Number 7, reduce the things that quietly sabotage fitness. Too much sitting, too much alcohol, poor sleep, chronic stress, and overeating highly processed food. Simple does not mean weak. Simple, repeated, changes physiology. The number that tells the truth. If you have been avoiding this conversation because you do not want to know, I understand that. A lot of people would rather not measure what exposes vulnerability. But here is the thing. Your body already knows the truth. The stairs know. The hill knows. Your breathing knows. Your recovery knows. Your blood vessels know. Your future knows. And whether or not you measure VO2 max formally, the underlying reality is there. So you can ignore it, or you can train it. You can tell yourself you are just getting older, or you can ask whether your reserve is shrinking faster than it should. Because one of the most powerful things you can do for longevity is not just lowering a risk marker, it is building a body that can still do life well. And that is what this number points to, more clearly than most people realize. Outro. If your cholesterol is a little off, pay attention. If your blood pressure is high, absolutely pay attention. But do not make the mistake of ignoring the number that tells you how capable your body really is. VO2 Max is not just for athletes. It is not just a fitness flex. It is a window into your heart, your lungs, your muscles, your circulation, your resilience, and your future. And the beautiful part is, it is trainable. Not perfectly, not instantly, but meaningfully. So if you want longer life, better energy, better blood pressure support, better independence, and a body that feels younger than the calendar says, stop asking only whether you are sick. Start asking how capable you are. Because that answer may tell you far more about how long you will live.